The emergency bunker beneath New Seattle's ruins hummed with the sound of overtaxed air filters. Admiral Chen's holographic display cast harsh blue light across the faces of her assembled commanders, the dozen men and women who now represented humanity's last line of defense. The Zorax attack pattern suggests they expected minimal resistance, said Commander Raj Singh, Tactical Operations Chief. His fingers traced light paths through the projection showing the devastated colonies. Their ships maintained perfect formation throughout. No adaptive maneuvers, no contingency deployments. They didn't expect us to fight back at all. Chen nodded. Because they don't see us as a threat. They see us as an infestation. Lieutenant Reyes, still wearing the singed uniform from her research vessel, stepped forward. Admiral, there's something else. Before they attacked, I managed to download a partial xenolinguistic matrix from their initial greeting protocols. She connected her data pad, and alien script flooded across the display. Their language contains no equivalent for negotiate or compromise. The closest analog translates roughly as temporary delay of inevitable outcome. A heavy silence fell across the room. General Jackson, his weathered face hollow with exhaustion, was the first to speak. So diplomacy isn't just unlikely, it's conceptually impossible for them. Precisely, Rice confirmed. And there's more. I've analyzed their communication patterns during the attack. They refer to us using terminology their systems typically reserve for automated machinery or simple organisms. We're literally classified below sentient in their hierarchy of life. Chen's eyes narrowed. Then they've made a fundamental error in judgment. One we'll exploit. She magnified the display, focusing on the Zorax fleet positions. They expect submission because that's what they've always received. But humans have something the Zorax have never encountered. Superior technology. Lieutenant Commander Davies asked, his voice tinged with bitter irony. No, Chen replied, a cold smile forming. A complete inability to accept subjugation. She placed her palm on the display, shifting the view to Earth's remaining military assets. The inventory was devastating. Less than 15% of their space-capable vessels remained operational. Ground defenses were largely intact, but designed for conventional warfare, not alien invasion. We don't have the ships to engage them directly, Singh observed. Then we don't engage directly, Chen countered. We fight asymmetrically. Dr. Wei, what's the status of Project Lazarus? A slight woman in civilian clothing approached the table. The Deep Space Communication Network is still operational. 78% of our quantum entanglement nodes remain undetected by Zorax scans. And the colony backup servers, still dark to their sensors. The data cores buried beneath Europa, Titan, and Mars contain complete backups of human knowledge, genetics, and cultural archives. Even if Earth falls, humanity will survive. Chen nodded. Good. Now we need to distribute our response plan through the quantum network. She turned to the assembled leaders. Every human left alive becomes resistance. We gather intelligence. We identify weaknesses. We coordinate globally. What exactly are we looking for? Jackson asked. Chen's fingers tapped a command sequence, revealing a schematic of a Zorax vessel captured by orbital cameras before New Seattle's defense grid failed. Every species has blind spots. Biological, technological, psychological. The Zorax believe themselves perfect, which means their blind spots will be systemic. We find them. We exploit them. And then, her voice hardened. We teach them exactly why humanity should never have been underestimated. As if punctuating her words, the bunker shook with another orbital bombardment. Dust sifted from the ceiling, but no one flinched. They initiated this battle with the assumption that humans are an evolutionary mistake, Chen said quietly. Our responsibility now is to ensure that the Zorax understand that their attack on humanity was the greatest miscalculation in their species' history. Dr. Elias Okoro crawled through the ventilation shaft of the Zorax laboratory ship, his lab coat stained with both human blood and the iridescent blue fluid that served as Zorax circulatory medium. The biological database, downloaded onto a modified neural implant at the base of his skull, felt like ice pressing against his brainstem. Every few meters, he paused to control the tremors, after effects of the engineered immune response he triggered in himself. The Zorax never posted guards at recycling junctions. Why would they? No lesser species had ever escaped their containment protocols before, but the aliens had never encountered humans' almost pathological inability to accept captivity. Reaching the external maintenance hatch, Okoro pressed his palm against the neural interface he'd modified with cells harvested from a dead Zorax technician. The panel recognized the alien DNA and slid open, revealing the vast emptiness of space and the small transport pod he'd reprogrammed during his work detail 3 weeks earlier. As he sealed himself inside the cramped vessel, alarms finally blared throughout the laboratory ship. Too late. The pod detached, and Okoro activated the stealth protocols he'd encoded using principles reverse-engineered from observing Zorax technology. The tiny craft disappeared from sensors, becoming just another piece of space debris in the cluttered orbit around Ceres. "Computer, set course for Europa," he whispered, his voice raw from weeks of screaming during experiments he forced himself not to remember. "Maximum stealth configuration. Compliance." The system responded in the flat tones of Zorax utility AI. "Estimated arrival, 47 standard hours." Okoro closed his eyes, allowing himself a moment of relief before the real work began. The data contained in his implant would mean nothing without someone capable of using it. Deep beneath Europa's ice crust, Commander Sasha Volkov studied the makeshift star chart projected onto the cavern wall. Her resistance cell had grown from 12 survivors to over 300 in just 8 weeks. The Zorax occupation force, despite their overwhelming firepower, had proven surprisingly inept at counterinsurgency operations. "Their patrol routes never vary," observed Karina Petrova, formerly a lunar mining engineer, now Volkov's chief of operations. "Fourth consecutive cycle with identical timing." Volkov nodded. "Because they don't adapt unless ordered to by higher command. Their initiative is entirely technological, not tactical." The cavern shook slightly as Europa's gravitational dance with Jupiter created another subsurface current. The Resistance had learned to harness these currents, using them to mask energy signatures when moving between hidden bases. "New communication intercept," announced Lai Chen, their signals specialist. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a Zorax transmission. "Translate," Volkov ordered. Sector Command reports continued disruption in resource extraction. Adjustment to pacification protocols authorized. Heightened neurological harvesting approved for remaining human population. Volkov's expression hardened. "Neurological harvesting." Lai nodded grimly. "They're not just killing the non-compliant anymore. They're extracting brain tissue from live subjects. Something about studying our neural architecture." A cold silence fell across the command center. Volkov broke it by slamming her fist against the ice wall. "Move up the timetable. We hit their communication relay tonight, not next week. That gives us only 6 hours to prepare," Karina protested. "And every hour we wait, they're dissecting more of our people." Volkov pulled up schematics for the Zorax facility. "We've observed enough to know their weaknesses. They rely entirely on technology with no improvisation. Their sensors can't distinguish between geological water movement and artificial disturbance if the patterns match." She highlighted 3 entry points. "We'll use the electromagnetic disruptors we salvaged from the mining equipment. Teams of 4. Plant the virus in their communication system and get out before they realize anything's wrong." "And the message?" Lai asked. Volkov's eyes reflected the blue glow of Europa's ice. "The same as always. We are still here. But add something new this time." A rare smile crossed her face. "Tell them we're coming for them. Not just surviving. Hunting." As her team dispersed to prepare, Volkov received an unexpected ping on her secure channel. The signature was unfamiliar, but the encryption pattern matched Admiral Chen's quantum protocols. The message was brief. Incoming asset. Biological intelligence critical to war effort. Prepare extraction coordinates. Authentication. Phoenix Rising. For the first time since watching her pregnant wife die in the initial attack, Volka felt something beyond rage and determination. She felt hope. Dr. Maya Patel stood in the center of Test Chamber 7, surrounded by equipment salvaged from 3 different scientific disciplines that had never been integrated before the war. The chamber, a repurposed nuclear reactor cooling facility, stretched 50 meters in diameter, its walls lined with sensors capable of detecting quantum fluctuations at the subatomic level. Final diagnostics complete, announced Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka from behind the radiation shield. Probability matrix stabilized at 97.8%. Maya nodded, making a final adjustment to the prototype drive, mounted on a reinforced platform at the center of the chamber. The device looked deceptively simple, a sphere 30 centimeters in diameter, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Inside was technology that shouldn't work according to any physics textbook published before the Zorak's arrival. "Begin sequence," she ordered, stepping back to the shielded observation area. The drive activated with a soft hum that gradually increased in pitch until it passed beyond human hearing range. Instruments registered the sound continuing to climb exponentially. At precisely 43.7 seconds into the sequence, the impossible happened. The sphere, along with a 2-meter radius of space surrounding it, simply ceased to exist within normal parameters of reality. Sensors registered a complete absence, not empty space, but a total void in spacetime itself. "My God," whispered Tanaka. It worked. Phase shift achieved, and sustained. Maya's fingers flew across the control panel. Quantum entanglement holding at molecular level. No degradation of material integrity. Her eyes widened as new data streamed in. "Hiroshi, are you seeing this? The drive isn't just shifting out of our reality. It's creating a bubble of altered physical law." Before Tanaka could respond, the sphere snapped back into existence, the air around it displacing with a thunderclap that cracked 3 observation windows. Maya was already moving, ignoring safety protocols to reach the prototype. Its surface was cool to the touch, not the extreme heat they'd expected. More significantly, the patterns etched into its surface had changed, reorganizing into configurations that hadn't existed before activation. "It's learning," she breathed. "The material is adapting to the phase shift dynamics." "That's not possible," Tanaka protested. "We designed it as a static system." Maya's smile was triumphant. "The Zoraks would agree with you. That's why they'll never see this coming." 3 levels below the test chamber, General Jackson stood before a holographic display of humanity's growing fleet. What had begun as 8 experimental vessels had expanded to 37, each incorporating lessons learned from previous designs. "The Harrier-class interceptors are complete," reported Colonel Diane Lewis, head of production. "Weapons integration at 92% efficiency." Jackson nodded, studying the sleek vessels that bore little resemblance to traditional human spacecraft. "And the Prometheus drives. Dr. Patel has confirmed successful phase shift capability in the latest test. Integration into the first 5 Leviathan-class carriers begins tomorrow. Timeline to operational status." Lewis hesitated. 3 weeks at current production capacity." "We don't have 3 weeks," Jackson said quietly. "Intelligence indicates the Zoraks are consolidating their fleet for a final push to Earth. We need the first carrier combat-ready in 10 days. Sir, the engineering teams are already working 20-hour shifts." "The materials. I understand the constraints, Colonel." Jackson's tone softened slightly. "But I've also seen what happens when we tell people something is impossible. They tend to prove us wrong." He gestured to the display. "Every ship you see here was designed, built, and armed by people who were told humanity was finished. I'm simply asking us to work a miracle one more time." Lewis straightened. "Yes, sir. I'll implement acceleration protocols immediately." As she left, Jackson turned to a secure terminal that connected directly to Admiral Chen's command network. The message waiting for him would change everything. Asterisk biological intelligence asset recovered from Zorax captivity. Confirms critical vulnerability in enemy neural architecture. Prometheus drives must be modified to generate targeted electromagnetic pulse at frequency 3.17 x 10^15 Hz. Priority Alpha asterisk. Jackson immediately opened a direct channel to Dr. Patel's laboratory. For the first time since the war began, they had more than just courage and determination on their side. They had a way to win. Admiral Chen stood absolutely still on the bridge of the HSS Retribution as the ship completed its phase shift emergence. The tactical display stabilized, showing the Zorax fleet in perfect geometric formation above Mars. Over 900 vessels arranged in concentric rings around their flagship. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, like a predator's symmetrical markings. Phase shift successful, reported Lieutenant Commander Reyes from the science station. Quantum signature stable. We are undetected. Chen allowed herself a single deep breath. The Prometheus drive had performed exactly as Dr. Patel promised, bringing them through what the Zorax would consider impossible space. The other human vessels would be emerging at their designated coordinates within the next 30 seconds. Tactical assessment, Chen ordered. Commander Singh's hands moved across his console, highlighting key enemy positions. Zorax fleet maintains ceremonial battle formation. Heavy weapons platforms concentrated in the outer ring. Command vessels in the central configuration. Their flagship, designated Eternal Dominion, maintains position at exact center. No defensive screens activated. Minimal power to defensive systems. They're not expecting resistance. Admiral. Chen's eyes narrowed, because they believe this is a victory formation, not a combat deployment. She tapped her neural interface, connecting to all 23 human vessels simultaneously. All ships maintain phase shift stealth. Synchronize targeting systems to designated coordinates. Prepare electromagnetic pulse generators to frequency 3.17 x 10^15 Hz. Acknowledgements came in from each vessel as they emerged from their phase shifts, invisible to Zorax sensors. The fleet, humanity's last hope, took position in a configuration no traditional military doctrine would recognize. Instead of a defensive formation, the human vessels arranged themselves at seemingly random points throughout the Zorax fleet. Signal from the Eternal Dominion, announced the communications officer. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. On screen, Chen ordered. The Emperor's face appeared, a disturbing approximation of human features stretched across an exoskeleton that pulsed with internal light. When he spoke, his voice was perfectly modulated, almost musical in its precision. People of Earth, your resistance has been noted and categorized as aberrant behavior typical of pre-ascension species. The delay in your processing has been unfortunate, but will now be rectified. Your extinction is the natural order. Your resistance has merely determined how much pain will accompany your species' final moments. The message continued, but Chen muted it with a gesture. Transmission analysis. Rise worked her console rapidly. Consistent with previous communications, no indication they've detected our presence. She paused, studying new data. Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from their fleet. They appear to be activating some form of synchronized weapon system. The void causality weapons, Chen said quietly. They're preparing to demonstrate on Luna. The bridge fell silent. 8 billion humans on Earth. Another 700 million on Luna. The stakes couldn't be higher. Chen opened the fleet-wide channel again. All vessels, execute Operation Thunderclap on my mark. She held up 3 fingers, lowering them one by one. As her final finger fell, the HSS Retribution fully materialized less than 5 kilometers from the Eternal Dominion, close enough that the massive Zorax vessel seemed to fill the entire view screen. The other human ships appeared simultaneously throughout the enemy formation, achieving complete tactical surprise. Before the Zorax could respond, Chen gave the command that would change the course of the war. All ships, initiate electromagnetic pulse. Full spectrum, maximum intensity. The pulse propagated outward at light speed, striking every Zorax vessel simultaneously. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the enemy fleet, systems failed in cascading sequence. Ships drifted out of their perfect formation. Weapons platforms went dark. And at the center, the mighty Eternal Dominion, pride of the Zorax Imperium, shuddered as internal explosions bloomed across its hull. Direct hit on all targets, Singh reported, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Zorax neural systems experiencing cascading failure. Their command network is collapsing. Chen opened a direct channel to the Eternal Dominion. When the Emperor's face appeared, his exoskeleton now flickering with disrupted energy, she delivered the message she had waited months to give. You initiated this battle under the assumption that humans would break. That was your first mistake. We'll discuss your others shortly, in person. The Zorax containment facility on Titan's southern hemisphere represented the pinnacle of their occupation architecture, a massive structure of crystalline alloys that dominated the methane-rich landscape. Inside, Commander Tariq Nassif and his resistance cell moved silently through maintenance conduits never designed for human access. Their exosuits, modified from mining equipment, filtered the toxic atmosphere while masking their thermal signatures. Primary junction ahead, whispered Amara Okafor, their engineering specialist. Guard drones on standard patrol cycle. Nassif checked the chronometer integrated into his helmet display. Synchronized attack commences in 3 minutes. Status of the other teams. Callisto team in position. Ganymede reports final approach. Europa. Amara smiled behind her mask. Europa reports first blood. Commander Volkov's team has already secured the communication hub. Nassif nodded. Volkov's reputation for aggressive tactics was well earned. Prepare the methane charges. Target the atmospheric processors first, then the security grid. The resistance fighters moved into position, each carrying devices that would have seemed crude by pre-war standards. But these weren't conventional weapons. They were specifically designed to exploit Zorax technological dependencies. 1 minute, Amara announced. Nassif opened the encrypted quantum channel that connected all resistance cells. Remember, we aren't just fighting for ourselves. Every Zorax resource tied up dealing with us is one less they can use against Earth. The timer reached 0. Execute, he ordered. Across Titan's sulfurous surface, carefully placed charges detonated simultaneously. The explosions themselves were almost secondary to their true purpose, triggering methane pocket reactions in the moon's crust. Within seconds, unnatural storms erupted around every major Zorax installation. The aliens' atmospheric processors, designed to maintain optimal conditions for their physiology, attempted to compensate but were quickly overwhelmed. Alarms echoed through their facilities as environmental systems failed in cascading sequence. Inside the primary installation, Nassif's team used the confusion to access the central purification system. Amara quickly interfaced with the controls, overriding safety protocols. Introducing compound now, she reported, injecting a murky fluid into the water supply. Nassif knew what the compound contained, a synthetic protein chain derived from Dr. Okoro's research, harmless to humans, but devastating to Zorax neural pathways. How long? He asked. 20 minutes until it reaches their hydration systems. Another 10 before symptoms begin. Nassif nodded grimly. Plenty of time for Phase 2. On the Zorax command carrier Unyielding Dominance, Supreme Military Coordinator Seth Rax struggled to process the flood of incoming distress signals. Holographic displays showed simultaneous attacks across 12 colonial installations, a coordinated offensive that shouldn't have been possible without centralized command infrastructure. Impossible, he muttered, his dorsal spines flaring with agitation. Their communication network was severed weeks ago. His second, sub-coordinator Vexillar, gestured to the tactical display where red indicators multiply by the second. The patterns defy standard analysis. Supreme One. Each resistance cell operates with different methodologies, yet somehow achieves synchronized effect. Explain, demanded Zethrax. On Titan, they've triggered environmental cascades. On Ganymede, they've contaminated critical systems. On Callisto, Vexlar's voice faltered. They've somehow reconfigured our own terraforming equipment to generate localized magnetic disruptions that are causing catastrophic failure in neural implants. A junior tactical officer approached, his posture showing appropriate submission. Supreme One, preliminary casualty assessments indicate 37% of our occupation forces have been compromised within the first hour of coordinated attacks. Impossible, Zethrax repeated, but with less conviction. Implement standard insurrection protocol. Identify the command nodes and eliminate them. That is the difficulty, Supreme One, Vexlar admitted. We cannot locate any command structure. Each cell appears to operate independently, yet their actions complement each other with mathematical precision. Zethrax activated the strategic simulation matrix, inputting the resistance patterns for analysis. The results were disturbing. Human tactics showed no adherence to any known military doctrine. When Zorak's forces adapted to counter one approach, the humans immediately shifted to another, often in ways that seemed contradictory, until they suddenly revealed their true purpose. On his private channel, a message arrived from the Emperor himself. Asterisk explained these failures immediately. Asterisk. For the first time in his distinguished military career, Zethrax found himself unable to provide a satisfactory answer. How could he explain that humans, a species with demonstrably inferior technology and biological capacity, were somehow outmaneuvering the most sophisticated military machine in galactic history? He composed his response carefully. Asterisk, these creatures violate all predictive models, Majesty. They sacrifice individual survival probability for collective success. Their adaptation rate exceeds our tactical computation capacity. Request immediate deployment of the void causality weapons to terminate resistance capacity at its source. Asterisk. The Emperor's reply was instantaneous. Asterisk granted. Asterisk. Zethrax should have felt relief. Instead, as he watched the tactical display where human resistance efforts continued to multiply despite crushing casualties, an unfamiliar sensation crept through his neural network, something dangerously close to doubt. In the Himalayan laboratory, Madeline's fingers danced across holographic interfaces as she refined her discovery. At 16, she possessed the focused intensity of someone far older, grief and purpose having accelerated her maturation beyond chronological years. The frequency modulation is the key, she explained to Dr. Okoro, who watched with growing excitement. Their neural architecture processes information through quantum entanglement, but that creates a harmonic vulnerability at exactly 3.17 x 10^15 Hz, which is why they shield their command centers with polarized crystalline alloys, Okoro realized. The material naturally blocks that specific frequency range. May nodded without looking up from her calculations. But if we could deliver the pulse directly to their central processing nodes, their entire neural network would cascade into failure, Okoro finished. Brilliant work, May. The teenager finally paused, her expression darkening. They killed my parents because they were trying to communicate. The Zorax couldn't understand why anyone would attempt cultural exchange rather than immediate submission. She adjusted a final parameter in her model. I want them to understand what it costs to underestimate us. A priority alert interrupted them. Admiral Chen's quantum encrypted communication appearing on the main display. The message was brief, but its implications enormous. Asterisk Zorax void causality weapons mobilizing toward Luna. Operation Achilles authorized. Prepare neural disruptor for delivery to Eternal Dominion. Extraction team inbound. Asterisk. Okoro turned to the assembled team. Package the disruptor for transport. Full encryption, backup systems, and redundancy protocols. To May, he added quietly, you've done more than anyone could have asked. This stays with the technical team now. She met his gaze with surprising steadiness. "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. This is a combat operation." "With respect, Doctor, I understand the frequency modulations better than anyone. If something goes wrong with the disruptor during deployment, you'll need me." Before Okoro could argue further, the facility's security system announced incoming aircraft. Through the reinforced observation windows, they watched as an unmarked transport craft descended vertically into the courtyard, its stealth systems deactivating only seconds before touchdown. The boarding ramp lowered to reveal a squad of Marines in advanced combat exoskeletons, led by a woman whose scarred face matched the most wanted profile in Zorak's controlled territory. "Commander Volkov," Okoro breathed. She nodded curtly, her eyes scanning the laboratory. "We have 18 minutes before the Zorak sensors detect our intrusion signature. Is the disruptor ready?" "Yes, but..." "Then we move now." Her gaze settled on Mai. "You're the frequency specialist." "Yes, Commander." Volkov studied her for exactly 3 seconds before deciding. "Suit up. You're with us." The HSS Retribution led a strike force of 7 vessels on what appeared to be a suicide run toward the massive Eternal Dominion. With the Zorak's neural network partially compromised by the initial electromagnetic attack, their response was sluggish and uncoordinated. On the bridge, Admiral Chen watched as targeting data streamed across tactical displays. Status of the Void Causality Fleet. 5 minutes from optimal firing position above Luna. Admiral, reported Singh. "We need to draw the Emperor's attention before they commit." Chen nodded. "Commence Operation Achilles. All ships. Execute attack pattern Delta 7. The human vessels broke formation, each pursuing seemingly random vectors that confuse Zorak's targeting systems. The HSS Retribution accelerated directly toward the Emperor's flagship, absorbing punishing fire that would have destroyed any conventional vessel. "Hull integrity at 68%, announced the tactical officer. "Dimensional shields holding but degrading." "Maintain course," Chen ordered. "Prepare to deploy boarding craft on my mark." The distance closed rapidly. At 10 kilometers, point-blank range in space combat, the Zoraks finally recognized the true nature of the attack. The Eternal Dominion activated its dimensional shields, creating a barrier that had withstood direct hits from supernova fragments. "Now, Doctor," Chen transmitted to the operation team. From the Retribution's launch bay, a specialized craft carrying Okoro, Mai, Volkov, and her Marines accelerated toward the Zorak's flagship. As it approached the seemingly impenetrable barrier, Mai activated the disruptor prototype. A precisely calibrated pulse transmitted across the electromagnetic spectrum, targeting the exact frequency she had identified. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The dimensional shields flickered, creating a momentary aperture that the human craft exploited with perfect timing. Before the Zoraks could respond, the boarding team was inside their perimeter, docking with an emergency access port on the flagship's outer hull. "Boarding successful," reported Volkov over the secure channel. "Commencing Phase 2. Chen allowed herself a tight smile. "All ships maintain suppressive fire. Keep their attention on us while the boarding team works." On her private command display, a countdown timer showed the void causality weapons approaching firing position above Luna. The fate of millions now rested with a small team inside the heart of the enemy's greatest warship. "Hold just a little longer," Chen whispered to the image of Earth visible from her view screen. "We're bringing the fight to them." The corridors of the Eternal Dominion seemed to pulse with organic light, the walls themselves reacting to the intruder's presence. Commander Volkov led the assault team through the labyrinthine structure, guided by tactical overlays derived from Dr. Okoro's stolen intelligence. "Central neural hub located 2 levels down," Okoro advised, monitoring his datapad. "The Emperor's sanctum should be adjacent." Volkov signaled her Marines to secure the intersection ahead. "Any sign they've detected our neural signature dampeners." "Negative. The localized electromagnetic field is maintaining integrity." Mai Lin moved alongside them, monitoring the disruptor device strapped to her back. The compact unit hummed with potential energy, ready to deliver its precisely calibrated pulse directly to the Zorax command nexus. "Contact," whispered Sergeant Torres through the tactical network. "Zorax security detail approaching from Section 9. Volkov made a rapid series of hand signals, deploying her team into ambush positions. As the Zorax guards rounded the corner, towering figures in crystalline armor that seemed to bend light around them, the humans struck with devastating precision. Instead of targeting the heavily armored body sections, the Marines focused concentrated fire on the neural connection points Okoro had identified. The effect was immediate. The guards convulsed as their neural systems failed, their coordinated movements degenerating into spasmodic twitches before they collapsed entirely. "Forward," Volkov ordered, leading the team past the fallen guards. "We have 7 minutes before the void causality weapons reach firing position." They encountered increasingly heavy resistance as they approached the neural hub, evidence that their presence had finally been detected. Each firefight followed the same pattern. Initial Zorax tactical advantage quickly negated by human adaptability. When standard breaching tactics failed against a sealed security door, Torres simply reconfigured her weapon to focus its entire energy output on a structural weak point no Zorax would consider vulnerable. "They're adapting to our presence," Okoro noted with concern as they passed the third checkpoint. "Their countermeasures are becoming more specific, but not fast enough," Volkov replied grimly. Finally, they'd reached the central neural hub, a vast spherical chamber dominated by a crystalline structure that pulsed with patterns of light too complex for human eyes to fully process. This was the true heart of the Eternal Dominion, the nexus point where the Emperor's commands were transmitted throughout the Zorax fleet. "May, begin the sequence," Volkov ordered, establishing a defensive perimeter around the chamber entrance. The teenager moved forward with remarkable composure, connecting the disruptor to the neural interface. Her fingers danced across the control surfaces with practiced precision. "Neural architecture identified," she reported, establishing harmonic resonance with the command frequency. Okoro monitored the data stream, eyes widening as he interpreted the information flooding his display. This is more than just a command network. It's their entire historical database, millennia of Zorax knowledge. "Can you access it?" Volkov asked, her attention split between the operation and the defense of their position. "Partially. The translation algorithms are struggling with the density of information." But he fell silent, horror spreading across his features. "Commander, I'm accessing records of previous Zorax conquests. 17 species, all subjugated or eradicated, some dating back over 4,000 years. A massive explosion rocked the ship, momentarily disrupting the gravity field. Admiral Chen's covering fire," Volkov noted. "How much longer?" "May. Disruptor at 87% synchronization. 2 more minutes to achieve optimal harmonic resonance." Volkov's tactical display showed enemy reinforcements converging on their position. "We may not have 2 minutes." As if confirming her assessment, a new figure appeared at the chamber's secondary entrance, taller than the guards, its exoskeleton gleaming with embedded technology that made it appear to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The supreme military coordinator of the Zorax Imperium regarded the humans with what might have been curiosity. "Fascinating," he said, his translator rendering his harmonic speech into flat English. "You've penetrated further than any species has ever managed." "We're just getting started," Volkov replied, signaling her team to adjust their position to cover both entrances. The coordinator's head tilted slightly. "Your tactics defy conventional analysis. Each human appears to be improvising rather than following established protocols. Our predictive systems cannot establish effective countermeasures." Okoro continued downloading data from the neural hub while keeping the coordinator distracted. "Perhaps that's why you've never encountered a species that could effectively resist you. Your analytical framework only recognizes threats that follow patterns you understand." a subtle vibration ran through the coordinator's exoskeleton, what Okoro recognized from his research as the Zorak's equivalent of thoughtful consideration. A noteworthy hypothesis. It would explain your anomalous success despite inferior technology. Disruptor at 94%, Mai whispered. The coordinator's posture shifted subtly. Whatever device you've connected to our neural hub, it won't succeed. The dimensional safeguards will activate in approximately 40 seconds. Volkov smiled thinly. We're counting on it. Admiral Chen stood at the observation viewport of the HSS Concorde, watching as the diplomatic shuttles arrived from across the galaxy. Each vessel represented a species that, until recently, had existed in isolation under Zorak's control, their very knowledge of each other's existence carefully restricted by their oppressors. Remarkable, murmured Dr. Okoro, who stood beside her. The Mythlar delegation is using modified Zorak's technology that they've already begun to adapt to their unique physiology. Chen nodded. Adaptive capacity seems to be accelerating across all the liberated species. Without Zorak's constraints, they're reclaiming their innovative potential. 2 years had transformed humanity's position in the galaxy from endangered species to cornerstone of a new interstellar community. The victory at the Eternal Dominion had cascaded into a full-scale revolution across Zorak space, as Mei Lin's disruptor technology was shared with every subjugated race. Admiral, the final delegation has arrived, announced Lieutenant Commander Reyes, now serving as diplomatic liaison. The assembly is ready. Chen straightened her uniform, touching the simple Earth insignia, the only decoration she had accepted despite the numerous honors offered. Then let's not keep them waiting. The grand chamber of the Concorde represented a fusion of architectural styles from a dozen worlds, deliberately designed to accommodate beings with radically different physiological needs. As Chen entered, representatives from 23 distinct species acknowledged her presence according to their own customs, some with gestures, others with light patterns or harmonic emissions. At the center of the assembly, Commander Volkov waited with the diplomatic team. Her expression remained stoic, but Chen could see the carefully concealed emotion in her eyes. They had both lost everything personal in this war, only to gain something neither had imagined possible. The Zorak's delegation occupied their designated section, their once ostentatious ceremonial armor replaced by simpler attire as mandated by the preliminary agreements. Their current representative, selected through their first-ever democratic process, appeared visibly uncomfortable with the proceedings. Chen took her position at the central podium, and the chamber quieted. Translation fields hummed softly, ensuring her words would reach every being present in a form they could comprehend. 3 standard cycles ago, she began, the people of Earth had never encountered another intelligent species. We dreamed of first contact as a moment of celebration and exchange. Instead, we faced extinction. She paused, allowing her gaze to move deliberately across the assembly before briefly acknowledging the Zorak's delegation. We didn't ask for this war. We didn't seek to become a military power, but when threatened with extinction, humanity revealed its true nature, not just our will to survive, but our determination to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. Throughout the chamber, beings signaled their agreement through their diverse communication methods. The Ketal delegation's crystalline skin refracted light in patterns of approval. The gaseous Voth generated harmonic resonances that the translation systems interpreted as emphatic concurrence. Today, we establish not just peace, but a new paradigm. The Galactic Cooperative will ensure that no species ever again faces systematic oppression or extinction. Every sentient race, regardless of technological development, has the right to self-determination. This includes the Zoraks, she added, prompting surprised reactions throughout the chamber, who must now rebuild their civilization on principles of cooperation rather than conquest. From the observers section, the former emperor watched with unnerving intensity. Though stripped of authority, he had requested permission to witness the proceedings, a request Chen had personally approved. Understanding the importance of this moment for both their species, As Dr. Okoro and Commander Volkov presented the framework for interspecies cooperation, Chen noticed the former emperor's attention focused not on the technical details, but on the interactions between different species, the way representatives from worlds with ancient enmities now consulted each other, how beings with incompatible biologies found creative methods to communicate directly. When the treaty was formally encoded through the new quantum entanglement technology, ensuring simultaneous ratification across all represented worlds, a subtle shift occurred in the chamber's atmosphere. It wasn't just the conclusion of a peace process, but the birth of something unprecedented. The former emperor rose from his observation position and, against the clear discomfort of his delegation, approached the diplomatic boundary where Chen stood. Security systems activated subtle countermeasures, but Chen gestured for them to stand down, meeting the former galactic tyrant with steady composure. "You were right," he said, his translator converting the complex harmonics of his speech into precise English. "In your first transmission after the Battle of Mars, you said our first mistake was assuming humans would break under pressure." His outer membrane rippled in what xenobiologists now recognized as profound cognitive adjustment. "But our greatest error was more fundamental. We initiated this battle, believing you primitive. We ended understanding that we never truly knew what humanity was capable of, or what we might have gained had we approached you as equals rather than subjects." Chen studied him for a long moment. "Then perhaps your species has more capacity for growth than we estimated as well." She extended her hand, a human gesture the Orcs had studied but never participated in. The true test of intelligence isn't conquest, it's adaptation. After a hesitation that seemed to stretch into infinity, the former emperor extended his upper appendage, completing the galaxy's most unlikely handshake. Across the chamber, beings from worlds that had never before communicated directly witnessed this exchange, with reactions ranging from approval to uncertainty. But for all present, the message was clear. A fundamental transformation had occurred, not just in the balance of power, but in the very conception of how diverse intelligences might coexist. The galaxy had entered a new era, one shaped by a species that, until recently, had never ventured beyond its own planetary system. And in that moment, humanity's response to those who had initiated this battle was complete, not with extinction or subjugation, but with the creation of something the Orcs had never imagined possible. A community of equals bound together by the very diversity their oppressors had feared.